Hello everyone, I'm Siddharthan. In this video, let's understand how we can build a lightning fast chatbot powered by Llama 3.1 model using Groq and Streamlit. Groq is known for its faster inferences on LLM, and we will be leveraging that in order to build this chatbot. So this will be the agenda for today's video, and let's get started. So this is how the final chatbot would look like, and you would ask a question like, let's say, what is a LLM? And here you can see that the response is like quite quick because of the Groq APIs that we are using. So this you can do in the free tier of Groq, so that you don't have to pay in order to run these open source models like Llama 3, Llama 3.1, Llama 2 and so on. So here we have asked a question of what is LLM, and we kind of got a quick response of like what is LLM is and so on. And I can just ask another question saying that explain in short. So this takes in the entire chat history and responds to this question based on the previous conversation. So this is not going to be an individual question and answer. So in this case, if you see, I haven't mentioned LLM or anything. So it looks into the previous question and answer, and it kinds of responds to it based on this particular question. So this is what we are going to build. So for this, I have my PyCharm open. So this is like the previous version of the app that we have created, but in real time now let's create this. So this is my project environment, and I have configured my Python here. So I'm currently running Python 3.1, 3.10, but it should also work for 3.11, 3.12 and so on. So the first thing that I'm going to do is create a directory and call this as src. So in this src folder, I'm going to have my script. So this is like one of the standard way of structuring your code, and I'll create another file and call this as requirements.txt. So this requirements.txt will contain all the libraries that we need, and this is how the code structure would look like. So we would have a src folder within which we would have this python file and so on, and in this same project directory we would have this requirements.txt file. And here we need two libraries, one is Groq and the other one is Streamlit. And the latest version of Groq, by the time that I'm building this particular chatbot, is 0.9.0, and Streamlit version is 1.37.0. So these are the version, but you can also check this in let's say Groq PyPI or Streamlit PyPI, in which you can see the latest version. So I'll save this requirements.txt file, and in PyCharm I'll open my terminal and install these libraries by saying pip install -r requirements.txt. So this will install all the libraries that I've mentioned in my requirements.txt file. So that is the next step. So the other thing that we have to do here is select your src folder, right click here and create a Python file, and let's call this main.py file. And again, this is like a naming convention that we do when we are working with Python. So here we have created a Python file called and calling it as main.py. And we are also seeing that the libraries are like installed successfully, so we are good with that. So I can close my terminal for now. And the other thing that I'm going to create here is a config.json file where I'm going to save my Groq API key. So this is one way of putting this in a config.json file, and the other way is you can save it in a .env file, the environment file, and using that you can load the key value pairs to the environment variable. So like that's the other way of saving your API keys. So it's always recommended not to put your API keys and other secret informations directly in your code. So that's why we will be going with this particular approach. So the next step would be getting the Groq API key. So for that you can search for Groq and you will see this groq.com. So in this Groq site, once you're like logged in here, you can go to the Groq cloud thing, or maybe I can just say Groq cloud. So once you go to this Groq cloud, you will see this option called as API keys. So here you can create a new API key, and you have to sign in with your Gmail or other account. So the sign up process is like pretty easy, and there are also limits on how many calls that you can how many times you can invoke this LLM based on like the free tier, and they also have like paid subscription and so on. So here I'll create a new API key and maybe call this as Llama 3.1 chatbot key. So I'll create this. So once we are copying this, we have to put this into the config.json file. So open and close curly brackets, as this is a JSON file, and the key should be in uppercase letter Groq underscore API key, and the value should be the API key that you have copied. So that is all. So I'm using this name because this is the environment variable in which we are going to save this. So you can use the same name of Groq API key in all in uppercase letter. Okay, so that is the next step. You can also see like the different models that's available. So you can go to this documentation, and then we have this models and so on, and we have this llama 3.1 405, but I think this is available only for paid customers. But we can use llama 3.1 8 billion or 70 billion. For now, let's go with this 8 billion version, where the model ID says llama 3.1 8 billion instance. So this is the model that we are going to use. So once you have saved your config.json file, let's come back to the main.py file and start building our Streamlit app. So here I'll say import OS and import JSON. This is to basically read your config.json file, and then let's import Streamlit as st, and from Groq I'm going to import Groq, where G is my uppercase letter, which is basically the Groq client that we will be using. And the next step is creating a configuration for a Streamlit page. So I'll call this as Streamlit page configuration. So this is from a completed chatbot code, and here you are seeing this little llama emoji, and the name says that it's llama 3.1 chat, right? So all these things are kind of configured in this configuration thing, and you can also say whether you want a centered app or a wide app, where the content of your app are kind of like present in a wider layout. So that's the thing that we are going to set here. So here I can say st dot st dot set page config, and within this we need to pass some parameters. So let's say that the first parameter is my page title, and let's call this page title as llama 3.1 chat. Yeah, llama 3.1 chat, and then we can mention the page icon. So it should be an emoji. So I'm just going to go to Emojipedia and copy a llama emoji, but again this is not mandatory. You can leave this as such without any emojis, or you can like use a different emoji as well. So here I'll say llama emoji, and from here you can copy it and paste it over here. And the next is the layout. So I'll say layout. As I said, here you can use two options. One is wide and the other one is centered, but here I'll go with centered layout. So these are all the things. So these three things mainly kind of dictates what this page icon should be, what's the name, and how this layout should be, as I said. Okay, so these are the three things. The next thing that we are going to do is load the API key that's present in this config.json file. So for that I'm going to say working directory is equal to os.path.directory name, and within this I'm going to say os.path.absolute path of my file. So this is a very important step. I'll explain you once I'm done with this. And I can say config underscore data is equal to json.load open f of my working directory slash config.json. So let's understand what we are doing in these two lines of code. Right, so now we have to read this config.json file, right? So for that you can use this json.load open the entire path of this config.json. So for that you can right click here, go to this copy path reference, and you can copy this absolute path. I can do that, but the problem is when I share this code with someone, they have to open this main.py file. They have to change this to their directory, to their path of the config file, right? Because this path is kind of where it's present in my particular PC, right? So they have to change this. In order to avoid that, we are kind of getting the path of this from the script file itself. So we are kind of calling this working directory, which is src folder in this case, and from there we are using this config.json. And for that we are finding the working directory of this main.py file itself. So by using this absolute path, so when you use this os.path.absolute path of file, this particular line of code will find the directory, or basically the absolute path of this main.py file itself. So when I run this, right, so it's going to give me the entire path of this main.py file, which is again the src folder, and from that I'm getting only the directory name, that is like src thing, this entire path to this directory. And there is you may get a question saying that this config.json file and the main.py file both are in the same directory. Now why we have to put this working directory, right? So you can just say config.json, but the problem is when you run your Streamlit app, it's not going to run from this particular directory. So it can run from your user directory, and it can run from the directory where your Python executable is present. So in order to kind of solve that issue, we are finding the absolute path of this config.json by first finding the working directory, which is going to give you the path of this src folder, and concatenating this src folder's path with config.json. Okay, so it's just like the way of copying this absolute path by means of code. So that's what we are basically doing here. So first find the location of this main.py file and then use that directory as the path of your config.json file. So this is the purpose. So again, if you kind of remove this and just try to do this with just config.json, sometimes you may get a error saying that there is no such file or directory called as config.json. So that's the issue that's going to arise. So that's the reason. So now let's say that so once we have this working directory, we are loading this JSON file, as I said, using this json.load open. It's going to read this JSON file and store that as a dictionary, and that dictionary is present in this config data now. So from this we have to get this Groq API key. So I'll say Groq API key is equal to config data, and within square bracket I can say the key, which is this Groq API key. So this name shouldn't change because this is the environment variable in which we are going to save our API key. So here let's say save the API key to environment variable, because when we call this Groq client, it's going to look for the API key in this environment variable. So for that we can say os.environ, and within square bracket mention the mention the variable name, environment variable name, that is Groq API key, which is equal to the key that we have loaded. So from this dictionary we are loading this particular key value and storing it over here, right? So now let's initiate a Groq client by saying that client is equal to Groq, which we have imported over here. Right, so this is the part where, one second, so we have successfully loaded our client. So now let's I mean this client will be used in order to send our question and answers and the chat history to the llama 3.1 model. And now we are going to work on building the user interface for our Streamlit app. So for that, first we need to initiate our chat history. So I'll say initialize the chat history as Streamlit session state if not present already. Okay, so this is our first step. So let's try to understand the purpose of this. So here I can say if chat history not in st.session state, sorry, in that case I'm going to initiate it by saying st.session state and dot chat underscore history is equal to a empty square bracket, basically a empty list. So let's try to understand this. So now when a user is asking a question and we get a response, we are displaying all this question and answer, right? So this red color emoji, human kind of a face, suggests that this is the question asked by the user, and this yellow color robot emoji says that this is the response from the LLM. So we need to display all these previous conversation, and all these previous question and answers are going to be saved in this chat history, which is present in Streamlit's session state. So when you don't use this, your Streamlit application won't maintain any sessions. It won't maintain any previous question and answer asked by the user. So when you don't use this, when a user asks a question, the LLM will respond, but you will see only that latest question and answer. So in order to avoid that, we are storing all this previous conversation in a key value pair called as chat history, and that's stored in the Streamlit session states, and now it's going to maintain its session state, so that when a user asks the next question, the previous questions are not lost. And in this step what we are doing is, when the app runs for the first time, there won't be anything in the chat history, right? So that's what we are saying here. So when the app runs for the first time, this chat history key value pair won't be present in the session state. So when it's not present, we are initiating it with a empty list. So that's the purpose of this. So I hope this is clear for now. Again, this is just an initiation step. So when the user asks question next time, so at that time we will save that question and answer to this chat history variable present in the session state. So now let's create a page title. So I'll call this Streamlit page title and say st.title. Again, you can give any name over here. I'll also copy this, maybe llama emoji, and say llama 3.1 chatbot. Okay, let's give this as the name of our Streamlit application. So the next step is we have to display the previous messages like this. So maybe I'll just complete this and I'll explain you. That will probably make more sense. So display chat history for message in st.session state dot chat history with st.chat message is role, and within that we have to say st.markdown message of content. Okay, so within this chat history we are basically going to store a dictionary, and that dictionary has two key value pairs. The first key value pair is role, and that basically says whether that particular message is from the user or from the assistant. So here user is the person who is typing in the question, and the assistant is nothing but the LLM's response. So here how we would store this chat history is something like this. So there will be this kind of a dictionary, and let's say we would have this thing as saying role would be user, and the content in this case would be, let's say what is a LLM, the same question that we have asked. So this is how it would look like. And then we would have, let's say, another dictionary that would have this, like the role would be your assistant, and then we would, let's say, have this content where it says like basically LLM response of what is LLM, right? So this is how the chat history basically looks like. So which is nothing but a dictionary like this, and this dictionary has two key value pairs, as I said. Let me delete this. Okay, so we have role user, and the content is what is the LLM, and let's say the assistant answers, and here we would mark this with role of assistant, and content is like whatever the response the LLM is giving. Now, so similarly we would have this several key value pairs, several dictionaries. So we would have the question from the user and the assistant's response, and then we would have the question from user and again the answer from the assistant. So this will be the alternate order in which we would see this. So now this entire thing will be stored in a list, right? So this is the first element of this list, and this is the second element of this list, and let's say our list closes here. This list is nothing but our chat history that we have initiated. So later in this code we will kind of add all this user's question as well as answer along with its role and the content. So this is my content, and this is my role, whether it's user or my assistant. So that will be stored in this particular list, and then we will store this in the session state chat history. And once the user is going to ask the next question, we are going to iterate over the chat history list and display the user what particular role is there, whether it's from the user or from the assistant. So that's what we are doing here. So now we are iterating over this st.session_state.chat history, which is basically a list, iterating over the role and the user and displaying it over here. So first we are saying with st.chat message of role. So this can take two values. Either it can take user or it can take assistant, right? So when it's user, it's going to use this red colored emoji, and when the role is assistant, it's going to take this yellow colored emoji. So that's how this for loop works. So now we can see, right, so this list for now would probably contain two elements. So one is this particular dictionary of what is a LLM and the LLM's response, and the next question is explain in short and the LLM's response. So this is present in this list, and we iterate it over here and we display it as the chat history. So that is how this entire thing works. Okay, so this is just to basically represent or display the previous question and answer, and later we would pass this entire chat history to the model so that it understand the context when we say explain in short. So here we are not mentioning like explain in short what is LLM, so we are not doing that. So it should explain the previous answer in short, right? So we are going to pass this entire chat history to the model and get a response, and that's how it's going to maintain the conversation. Like without looking at a question individually, it's going to look at the previous question and answer, and it's going to give us a response. So that's about it. Okay, so the next step that we are going to do is create a input field for the user to type in a question, which is nothing but this box that you're seeing along with the send button. So for that we can say input field for users message, right? So here we can say user prompt is equal to st dot chat input, and within that you can say anything, ask LLM or ask llama or anything of your choice. So here I'll maybe say ask llama, and this st dot chat input will basically create this smaller widget of where the user can type in something and click the send button, right? So this is created using this st dot chat input, and when the user has given a user prompt, right? So let's say if user prompt, that means when the user has given a prompt and click the send button, in that case what we are going to do is, 1 second, user prompt, so say st dot chat message user dot markdown user prompt. So within parentheses we have to say user prompt, and then st dot session state dot chat history dot append. So chat history is a list, so we can append elements to that, and I can say role is user, and the content is going to be the user prompt. So it should be a variable. Let's try to understand this. So here we are doing two things. So once, maybe I'll refresh this. So here we have this ask llama thing, which is this st.chat input. So once the user has typed in something, let's say what is a transformer. So let's say this is the question in AI. So let's say this is the question. So by the moment they click this send button or press enter, we are going to display it using this st.chat message with a user tag. That means it's going to create that little red color emoji of a human face, and it's going to display this content, which is this particular question, in markdown format. Once that's done, we are going to store this question to chat history by mentioning the role, which is user, because this is the question you asked by the user, and the content key will take this value of user prompt. So that's what basically happens here. So when I click this send, you're seeing this first, right? So you're seeing this question with this red emoji. So this particular thing is done by this st.chat message user.markdown thing, and in the background this is appended to chat history, right? So the next step is we have to send this to the LLM and get a response, which is, in this case, we are going to send it to Groq API and get its response using a llama 3.1 model. So this part is send users message to, so here we haven't completed this part of getting the LLM's response. So this is from the previous code that I've completed already, so don't get confused. So we have completed till the part where we are kind of displaying the user's question over here. So that's the thing. So here we are going to say send users message to the LLM and get a response. So here we are not going to send only the text but this entire chat history. So we'll be sending this entire chat history. For that we have to extract these question and answer from this chat history. So I'll say messages is equal to, which is basically a list, and say role is system, and the content in this case would be you are a helpful assistant, right? And the other one is put asterisk symbol and say st dot session state dot chat history. Let's try to understand what's happening in this case. So whenever we call a LLM, we kind of set a system message to it saying like what we are expecting from the LLM. So here we want the LLM to behave as an assistant that's going to answer our question. So here we are mentioning a role is system and the content is going to be you are a helpful assistant. So and this is like the first key value pair that we would have in the messages, and then we are unpacking all the elements from this chat history and appending it as list. So how this would particularly look like is, maybe I can show this to you. So the chat history, as we have discussed earlier, is a list and it would contain elements like this. So this is for my assistant. Let's say these are all the different things that we have. This is from user and users question. Maybe I'll put this as users question 1, and this can be assistant, and let's say this is like assistant's answer 1. Let's say this is the thing, and we have like multiple previous conversations like this, right? So let's say the content is users question 2, and then we have this assistant answer 2. So this is how the chat history will look like. Now I have a default first key value pair that is nothing but the system command to the LLM on how it should act. Now when I use this asterisk of st.session_state.chat history, it's nothing but unpacking all the elements of this list and sending this as messages. So when you do this, what would happen is this would unpack all this values from this list, added to this particular list where this would be my first element, and this entire thing is nothing but my messages. So this is how your messages would look like. So it would be a list, and that list would contain all the conversation from the the user and the assistant, and we will send it. Now let's say the user is asking a third question. Let's call this as users question 3, and now this message has to be message list has to be sent to the LLM, and it would respond to this third question given by the user. But it's not going to do that alone, it's going to look at the previous conversation as well in order to get a idea. So that what happens when you kind of use this asterisk symbol, which is basically to unpack all the elements of the list and send it via this way, right? So that's basically the purpose. So all this is happening when the user has typed in something in the chat input, click the send button. So once that's done, we are displaying the user's question and saving that question to the chat history, and then appending it to these messages which already has a system command. Okay, so that's the process, and now we finally can get a response. Let's say response is equal to client, where client is nothing but the Groq client that we have loaded over here. So this will only work once you have stored your Groq API key here. Okay, so response client dot chat dot completions dot create. So this is the function that we have to use, and within that we need to mention the model that we are interested in. So here we are interested in model 3 llama 3.1. So here we went to the documentation and clicked the model, right, previously. So here we are going to use this particular model ID, which is llama 3.18 billion instance. So you can also use the 70 billion versatile or the other different models that's present over here. So that's possible to Gamma or other open source models as well. So here I'll paste this llama 3.18 billion instant, and messages parameter would be this messages. So here we are basically mentioning the model that we want and also passing this entire conversation that we have, for which we need to get a response. So these are the parameters, and now when we run this, we would get the model's response and it will be stored in this response variable. But there won't be this content alone, there will be other details like the question and all those things, but we want the response alone, right? So for that, I'm going to say assistant response is equal to response dot choices. This I've showed you in the previous video where I've accessed Groq for LLM. So how to extract this message alone. So for that, you can use response dot choices dot message dot content. So it's like series of key value pairs and so on. So within that, this is how you can extract like the entire content. So response dot choices 0 dot message dot content will basically contain the string value of basically that response given by the LLM. So now I'll say st dot session state dot chat history dot append. We are going to append the LLM's response. So here I'll say role should be assistant, and then the content should be assistant response. Okay, so this is nothing but doing the same thing, but this is for appending the user's question, but this is for appending the assistant response. So for the next question, we automatically iterate over this chat history and display the user's question and the LLM's response. So that's the purpose of this session state appending it, right? And finally we can display it, so just like we did over here, right? So similarly we are going to say with st dot chat message say assistant. So this is to display the LLM's response. So assistant st dot markdown assistant response. So this is the entire thing. Okay, so this is the code. I'll just tell you quickly like how this works. So the user has typed in something and clicked the send button, and now we display the user's question with that little user emoji and store this user's question to the chat history, where we have this role and content as our key value pairs. Role will say whether that is from the user or it is from the assistant, right? And we are appending this user's question to this particular role of user. And now we are sending this along with a system message of saying you are a helpful assistant to the model. And we are also unpacking all the elements from this chat history so that the model understand the entire context, right? And then we are calling this llama 3.1 8 billion instant, and we are passing this messages, the question along with the previous conversation history. So now once we get this response, we are extracting only the response that we are looking at using this response.choice 0.message.content and storing that answer in my variable called as assistant response. And even that we are storing that to the chat history, so that during the next iteration of this for loop we can display the user's question as well as the LLM's answer. So what you're seeing over here, right? So that's the purpose. And once we have appended it, we are displaying it to the user like st.chat message assistant. So this basically puts in this little yellow emoji, and then we are displaying the content using markdown assistant response. So this is the markdown that's what like we are representing over here. So this is this entire code. So maybe now let's run our Streamlit app and make sure that everything is working. And before that, I'll stop the other app that I have running in the background. So I'll stop this, minimize this, I'll open terminal from here. So if you refresh this probably won't work as we have stopped the application. Now I'll come here, clear all the previous thing and say Streamlit run. So you have to mention this part. So this is running from llama chatbot env, and within that main.py file is the one that contains a script to run my Streamlit app, but it's within that src folder. So I have to say Streamlit run space src slash main.py. So this should open my chatbot, and here I can ask a question of, let's say, what is machine learning? Okay. So here we are getting a response. As you can see, the response is pretty quick because of the Groq API that we are using. So machine learning is a fascinating field and so on. It's basically giving a very large explanation. Now I can say explain in short. So now it's going to again quickly give me a response with like very minimalistic representation or basically definition of what machine learning is and all those details, right? So this is what we are basically doing. I'll just give you a quick recap of what we have done. So first we have imported all the libraries, set the page configuration, our API key is stored in this config.json file and so on. So we are saving that to the environment variable, and then we are initiating a Groq client. And the important key factors here are maintaining our chat history. So we are maintaining that using the session state within Streamlit, and to this chat history we are going to save all the questions asked by the user by having a role of user, and the LLM's response by having a role of assistant, right? So that using a for loop we can display all the previous question and answer, and using that same chat history we can send this to the LLM and get the response based on the context of the previous conversation. And then we have this user prompt where we are creating this chat input field where the user can type in something and click a send button, and once they have done that, we are going to add the user's question to the chat history, send it to the model by unpacking the chat history, get a response, and finally adding that to the chat history as well, and finally displaying that. So that's how this entire thing works. So when I type in something, it's going to display it over here, send it to the LLM, get a response, and again display this. And all this is happening by also maintaining the chat history in the background. Okay, so when you refresh this, all this is going to happen again. So again, you wouldn't have your chat history in your session state, because like each refresh, it's like it's creating a new instance of this web application kind of thing. It's like new page of this application. So again, your chat history will be initiated with a empty list and so on. So this is how all these things works. And if you're not sure about this, let's say how your assistant response would look like, how your response would look like, or what is the nature of your chat history at a particular point of time, you can debug this by including some print statement within these lines. Let's say put a print statement of st.session_state.chat history. So now you can know at that particular point of time how the chat history was looking like. So you can maybe include those print statement in order to debug this, in order to understand how the variable or basically the chat history is changing and so on. So I hope everything is clear until this point. I'll share this code in my video description. You can check that out and please try this out, and I hope that this is useful to you. And that is all from my side, and I'll see you in the next upload. Thanks for watching.